After finding the Dream Stone, countless people make their biggest dreams come true, but end up creating supervillains, wars and even huge storms with this cursed artifact. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Wonder Woman 1984, from 2020. From an early age, Diana was trained by her mother to become a great warrior. The young princess lived on the island of Themyscira with the Amazons and, despite her young age, proved to be as skilled as any other warrior. Her smaller size and strength never prevented her from excelling in activities that required physical skills. On the contrary, Diana has always been able to use her weaknesses to her advantage, which has allowed her to stand out among all the other Amazons. However, one day, during one of the tournaments, just as Diana was about to secure her victory, she fell off her horse. At that point, she had only two options: give up the race or cheat by taking a shortcut. Having always been a competitive person, the Princess of Themyscira ended up choosing the second option and managed to get back on her horse. The young woman was about to win the tournament when Antipope prevented her from taking the final stage because she discovered that Diana had cheated. Frustrated with her own failure, the girl begins to cry, but is supported by her mother, who says that one day Diana will be a great legend like the warrior Asteria. Years later, in 1984, Diana is living on Earth among humans and has dedicated her life to protecting humans from themselves. One day, a group of criminals commit a robbery at an antique store in the mall and try to escape. However, when he realizes that he is surrounded, one of the thieves captures a girl and decides to make her a shield. The madman is about to throw the girl from the second floor when Wonder Woman appears and rescues the child. She then uses her lasso of truth to arrest the criminal and then captures the rest of the gang. After catching all the robbers, Diana hands them over to the police and leaves, as her identity is still a mystery to the humans. While everyone wonders who that woman is and where she came from, Diana goes about her life trying to get over the perishment of Steve Trevor, the only man she has ever loved. The next day, when she arrives at the company where she works, Diana meets Barbara Minerva, a brilliant scientist who finds it difficult to get along with her new colleagues. That afternoon, while Barbara is investigating some ancient artifacts, Diana approaches to offer her help, as her colleague has recently been hired. At that moment, she finds an antique piece that promises to fulfill any request and, even though she believes that this citrine stone is just a fake, Diana doesn't miss the opportunity to wish to have her beloved back. The woman then invites Barbara to lunch, as she notices that she finds it very difficult to socialize and is feeling lonely. Arriving at the restaurant, the two women talk about their past passions, then Diana reveals that she used to be in love with a pilot, but he perished a few years ago. That night, while leaving work and returning home, Barbara is surrounded by a drunk man who tries to kiss her and starts shouting for help. Suddenly, Diana appears and throws the man away. She then asks Barbara to leave and the scientist begins to wonder how her coworker was able to take that guy down so easily. Instead of going home, Barbara decides to return to the office. When she gets there, she takes the artifact that promises to be able to fulfill any wish and asks to become strong and imposing like Diana. The next morning, Barbara wakes up in her office and changes her clothes so that her coworkers don't notice that she has slept in the office. As she leaves the room, she runs into Carol, who asks her new employee to present the Smithsonian Institute's facilities to Mr. Maxwell Lord, a major oil businessman. However, upon meeting him, Diana senses that there is something wrong with this guy and soon begins to suspect that the donations he made to the museum were made with ulterior motives. Contrary to what he appears on TV, Mr. Lord is no longer able to stand out in his market, as he is facing enormous competition from Amir Said, known as the new Oil King. When he arrives at his office, Max runs into his son and learns that he will have to spend the whole weekend in the company of Alistair. The businessman then receives a visit from Simon, one of his biggest investors, and learns that he only has 48 hours to return the money he has invested in his company. Otherwise, everyone will know that Max is a fraud. That afternoon, after leaving work, Barbara goes into a store to choose the dress she will wear to the party and surprises everyone with her beauty. For the first time in her life, the woman feels noticed wherever she goes and Max invites her to a more private place. Since she's in love with the businessman, Barbara decides to take him into her living room and, while she's kissing him, Max takes the opportunity to steal the Dream Stone. Upon arriving at the museum, Diana is surprised by a mysterious man who claims to know her. At first, she tries to dismiss him, but soon discovers that they have known each other for much longer than she could have imagined. After asking a few questions, Diana realizes that Steve Trevor is in that guy's body, so she runs into his arms. That night, the couple walk through the streets under the starlight and Steve is amazed to see how advanced the aircraft of that time are. The pilot then takes Diana to his host's apartment and they catch up while Steve tries to get used to his new body. After stealing the artifact he has spent years looking for, Max returns to his office and places his order. However, unlike all the other users before him, Max isn't content with just one request. Instead, he wants to become the Dream Stone itself, so the rock begins to crumble right in front of him. The next morning, when she gets up, Barbara walks to the fridge and, when she opens the door, she realizes that she is much stronger than usual. Minutes later, Diana wakes up next to Steve and is overjoyed to discover that everything she experienced the night before was real, not just a dream. Despite wanting to spend the whole day in that room, she decides to go out to investigate how a stone was able to bring her boyfriend back in someone else's body. Meanwhile, Max pays a visit to his investor and convinces Simon that he wants Oro Negro, his company, to become internationally known. After helping her boyfriend to dress according to the fashion of the time, Diana takes him to see the company where she works. Walking through the streets, Steve is amazed by all the technology and facilities of the modern world, especially the subway. Before starting her investigation, Diana takes Steve on a tour of the Smithsonian Institute and he is thrilled to see the section of the museum dedicated exclusively to the evolution of aircraft. When he arrives at the office, Max discovers that all his oil wells are gushing and he can hardly contain his excitement, as he was already on the verge of selling all his land. That morning, Raquel, his secretary, takes dozens of calls from investors and wants more help to cope with the new demands. After the woman makes her request, new employees immediately show up for job interviews and Max doesn't think twice about hiring them. When she meets Barbara, Diana introduces Steve and tells him that she will need the citrine stone to do some research. At this point, the scientist tells her that she lent the stone to Max Lord the night before because she didn't think it would be a problem, since the artifact was just a cheap fake. After hearing this, Diana runs to get a cab and Steve accompanies her to the businessman's office. When they get there, the couple see lots of people outside the building and Diana breaks a huge padlock to break into the garage. They then take the elevator up and make their way to Max's room, where they find numerous ancient studies on this wish-granting stone. Just then, Diana calls her coworker and asks Barbara to use all her investigative skills to find the exact spot where the citrine stone was found. Wonder Woman believes that the artifact was created by a god and, if this is true, the object is even more powerful than she imagined. Rummaging through the office wastepaper basket, Steve discovers that Max Lord has recently bought a plane ticket and is about to board a flight on his way to Cairo. After obtaining this information, Diana decides to go after him and takes Steve to the landing strip of the Smithsonian Institute so that he can choose an aircraft to fly. When he gets on the plane, the pilot tries to figure out how to start the machine, because the control panel is very different from what he's used to. However, it doesn't take long for him to get used to that jet and he quickly manages to fire up the turbines to start the takeoff. At that moment, Ken and Jake realize that there is an aircraft on the runway and set off a siren to alert the guards. Immediately, a security team starts chasing the jet and Diana realizes that if nothing is done, both she and Steve will be in trouble. So she decides to try using a power she inherited from her father. Hundreds of years ago, Zeus hid the Mysteria from the world and, like him, Diana also possesses the ability to make things invisible. However, in 50 years, she has only managed to do this once, so she needs to concentrate to put her power to the test again. Then, when the plane takes off, Diana manages to make it invisible and the aircraft disappears from radar. On that 4th of July, American citizens celebrate the independence of the United States and Steve is delighted to witness, for the first time, a beautiful fireworks display. At that moment, he decides to fly above the clouds to have the privilege of seeing the lights shining down below and Diana compliments her boyfriend on his talent for flying, as she has not yet been able to master this skill. After several hours of research to discover the origin of the citrine stone, Barbara leaves the institute and rushes at high speed back home. On the way, she comes across the same drunk man who tried to grab her the night before and, once again, the man tries to get close to her. This time, however, Barbara feels confident enough to take him on and throws him against a truck parked next to it. When the man falls to the ground, Barbara hits him with a kick to the chest and throws the attacker far away. While attacking him with several kicks, the woman begins to feel happy about her revenge and says she could do it all night. However, just as Barbara is about to eliminate that guy, a homeless man appears and she decides to leave. After arriving in Cairo, Egypt, Max meets the oil king to talk business and Amir asks him how he managed to grow his empire overnight. The man knows that his competitor was bankrupt and suspects that he used illegal means to prosper. At that moment, Max asks Amir what his deepest wish is and assures him that he will fulfill it as long as the man gives him all his oil. When he hears this, Amir starts laughing, as he has just sold his oil to the Saudis. Furious at not being able to get what he wants, Max takes away his competitor's entire security team and leaves him alone to face the consequences of having wished for the formation of a great wall in the middle of the city. Just as she is about to arrive in the Egyptian capital, Diana spots Max Lord in a car heading in the opposite direction and buys the taxi driver's car to go after him. Seeing the couple through the window, Max orders his security guards to get rid of them, then the soldiers start shooting. At this point, Diana decides to put on her costume and face her enemies alone, as she doesn't want to put Steve's life at risk. After ripping the steering wheel off one of the trucks, Wonder Woman uses the vehicle as a shield to approach her next target and manages to get rid of the gunman who was trying to eliminate her. However, it isn't long before other guards approach and Diana ends up being shot, so she hides under one of the vehicles. When he sees his beloved in danger, Steve doesn't think twice before throwing the car on top of one of the tanks to destroy the cannon. Meanwhile, the other soldiers try to hit Wonder Woman with their weapons, but she manages to knock over the truck and jumps onto the windshield of the car to talk to Max. Diana then tries to convince him to hand over the stone, but discovers that Max has transferred the power of the artifact to himself. Trying to escape the new shots, Wonder Woman ends up trapped between two cars and is about to be crushed when Steve appears piloting the battle tank and uses the vehicle as a barrier to prevent Diana from being hurt. When she notices a group of children playing a few meters ahead, the heroine fears that they will be run over. Then, after pushing one of the vehicles off the road, she enlists the help of her boyfriend to reach the two young boys before their lives are at risk. After holding the children, Wonder Woman is unable to maintain her flight and falls to the ground. When the vehicles approach, she uses her own body as a shield to protect the little ones, but the drivers manage to swerve and continue on their way out of town. At this point, the couple see numerous helicopters flying towards the capital and discover that a large wall has been built that morning. Now, the poorest communities in Egypt have no access to the only source of fresh water in the area. While all the Egyptians are panicking, Diana calls Barbara and discovers that the citrine stone has mysteriously appeared in different civilizations over the years. Although she was unable to discover the exact origin of the artifact, the scientist reveals that her last clue points to a man who claims to be a Mayan shaman. In her research, Barbara discovered that this guy gives courses in an abandoned house and shares the address with Diana. The next morning, Barbara decides to pay a visit to Babajide and, soon after, Diana and Steve show up to meet her. After being received by the charlatan, the trio start asking questions and discover that the citrine stone somehow destroyed the Mayan people in a few months. Apparently, all civilizations that enjoy its power collapse and cease to exist. After his people were destroyed, Babajide says that the few survivors buried the stone so that it would never be found again, but this plan didn't work as expected. Reading the ancient records, Diana discovers that the wish-fulfilling stone was created by an evil god called Dchalafraya Ero, also known as the God of Lies. The truth is that the artifact fulfills wishes and, in return, takes away the user's most precious possession. This explains why Diana weakened after Steve was brought back, as she began to lose her powers. The only way to stop the collapse from happening is to destroy the stone or return everything it has given you. The problem is that the artifact has already been destroyed, as Max Lord has become the stone itself. At that moment, Diana realizes that she has a difficult choice to make, because if the businessman is eliminated, all the wishes granted by the stone will disappear, including Steve. Upon hearing this, Barbara realizes that she risks becoming a loser again and decides to leave, as she refuses to give up her wish. That afternoon, Max is visited by the most powerful men in the country and grants them his greatest wish, so that he can get something in return from each of them. However, as he carries out the requests, Max feels his health declining and begins to wonder what is going on, as his body is getting weaker and weaker. While Max tries to arrange a meeting with the president, Diana thinks of a way to destroy the stone without having to give up her wish, as she can't imagine a life without Steve again. In her office, Diana keeps the armor of Asteria, the Mystura's greatest warrior. When the human race imprisoned the Amazons, Hippolyta freed her sisters, but someone had to stay behind and contain the men so that the others could escape. That day, Asteria sacrificed herself so that the Amazons would have the chance to return to the Mystura, and her bravery has never been forgotten. When she returned to Earth, Diana searched for Asteria, hoping that she might still be alive, but all she found was her armor. Upon arriving at the White House, Max asks the president what his greatest wish is, and he says he would like more nuclear weapons to bring down the Russian government. In return, Max says he will take all the president's power, influence and authority. After becoming one of the greatest authorities in the country, the businessman leaves and, on the way, comes across Wonder Woman. After lassoing her opponent, Diana tries to convince him to accompany her, but Max orders his security guards to attack her. During the shootout, Steve uses a silver platter to protect his beloved, as he knows she is weakened. The couple then use a plan to get rid of all the guards. While Diana uses the lasso of truth to take them down, Steve steals the pistol of the man who tries to shoot his girlfriend. However, just as Max Lord is about to be captured, Barbara appears and attacks Diana. At that moment, the businessman tries to escape and Steve goes after him. Now that she has everything she ever wanted, Barbara is unwilling to give up her new life because she can't bear the thought of losing what she has achieved. During the battle, White House security guards appear and start shooting, so Barbara attacks them while Diana uses what little power she has left to stop the men from getting hurt. At this point, the woman is ready to eliminate anyone who stands in her way and uses her new powers to hurt Wonder Woman so that Max can escape. Seeing her opponent weakened, Barbara decides to stop the attack, but says that if Diana decides to go after Max again, she will end up being eliminated. While helping his injured girlfriend to safety, Steve observes all the chaos that the city of Washington has become and Diana realizes that, if nothing is done, her world will soon collapse. At that moment, Steve realizes that he will have to return to the world of the deceased so that his girlfriend can regain her powers, because only she can reverse all that chaos. When she hears this, Diana despairs, because the only thing she ever wanted was to have her lover back and now she has to give up this gift. After kissing Steve goodbye, Wonder Woman renounces her wish and immediately regains her powers so she can go after Max. At that moment, she uses the lasso of truth to hitch a ride on an airplane and, once she's above the clouds, Diana is able to hone her flying skills. Meanwhile, Max Lord is broadcasting Live to the whole country and, in his speech, he says that he will fulfill the greatest dream of every person on the planet. When humans' darkest desires begin to surface, chaos hits the earth and every corner of the planet begins to collapse. On the other hand, Max feels better than ever as he steals all the health and vitality from the people who have had their requests fulfilled. At that moment, Diana appears wearing Asteria's armor and has to fight off the guards in order to break into the fortress. With her new costume, Wonder Woman is able to protect herself from gunfire and uses her bracelet to throw all her opponents away at once. When she is about to invade the fortress, Barbara shows up to stop her and Diana realizes that her colleague is looking threatening. As well as having spots all over her skin, Barbara also acquired a tail and saw a significant increase in her physical abilities. Seeing Wonder Woman approaching, the cheetah decides to attack her and uses her sharp nails to strike her opponent. At this point, Diana uses the wings of her armor as a shield to protect herself, but soon realizes that this barrier will soon be destroyed. Despite her fragile appearance, Barbara has more strength than an entire army and is determined to protect Max at any cost. When she realizes that she has no choice but to face her, Wonder Woman gets rid of her wings and, after taking down the cheetah, she uses the lasso of truth to hang herself. Seeing her opponent trying to get away, Barbara immediately goes after her and hitches a ride on one of the power cables to swing around and catch up with her. While trying to get rid of her opponent, Diana ends up falling into the water and knocks the cheetah down with her. When she sees one of the power cables about to hit the lake, the heroine uses all her strength to immobilize Barbara and gives her one more chance to renounce her desire. However, the scientist says she will never do that, so Diana has no choice but to electrocute her in the water. Realizing that her opponent is seriously injured, Wonder Woman pulls her out of the lake and brings Barbara to the surface. She then goes to meet Max, but is unable to get close to him. After destroying the cameras to interrupt the broadcast, Diana realizes that a tornado is forming around the businessman and ends up being repelled away. When she realizes that she won't be able to defeat him alone, Wonder Woman decides to make her last move and uses the lasso of truth to show Max the calamity that the world has become thanks to his wishes. At that moment, the man realizes that his world is about to be destroyed and his son, Alistair, will be taken with it. Seeing the despair in the boy's eyes, Max realizes what a big mistake he has made and renounces his desire to save him. Immediately, all the wishes he had made were undone, preventing a nuclear war from destroying the entire human race. At the last second, Diana managed to save her world from imminent destruction and broke the cycle of chaos generated by the Wishing Stone. Minutes later, Max rushes to meet Alistair and is relieved to discover that his son is alive. When he finally manages to take him into his arms, the businessman realizes the great mistakes he has made and says that his only wish now is that one day his son will be proud of him. Months later, when Christmas arrives, Diana is happy to realize that human society has managed to re-establish itself completely and walks through the streets while watching the snow fall. Suddenly, a man approaches and she soon realizes that this guy is her boyfriend's former host. But instead of being sad to see him, Diana is grateful for the opportunity she had to meet Steve again after so many years, even if it was only for a few days. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.